Welcome back to your second hour of HQ Spotlight. Haley Sutton tapping in for Katie Mox. We are tackling our Mock Monday, the first one of the post-regular season in the NFL. 14 teams making their way into the postseason. The rest of those teams, though, already looking ahead to 2026. The top of the draft order is officially set. Congratulations to the Las Vegas Raiders. You will pick number 1 overall. And if you guys remember back in the day, 2007 to be exact, that was the last time they picked number 1 overall. They took Jamarcus Russell. We all know how that worked. And a few years later, here they are in the same position. So let's break down the entire opening round of the draft, because the end of the regular season marks the beginning of our offseason work here at HQ. But our draft guys never sleep. They've been working hard 24/7 here. Mike Renner and Ryan Wilson joining us. They've been charting all the names, all the notes you need to know all season long, and we are ready to go this first mock draft Monday of the new year's, fella. Renner, you're going to tackle our odd numbers picks, and Wilson, you're going to do the even. So obviously that means, Mike, we start with you, and we start with those Raiders. Jamarcus Russell considered the biggest bust in NFL history. And so all signs are pointing to needing a quarterback again in the upcoming year. Fernando Mendoza has been the name that has been already slotted into that number 1 overall pick. Why is Fernando Mendoza different than Jamarcus Russell?
There's a lot of reasons why. We could go through a whole list here. But I think the biggest thing is just this guy lives in the playbook. Like, you watch the interviews, you watch him talk about the game of football, you see one of the most cerebral minds coming out of the draft in recent memory. I mean, this guy lives it. He loves it. I think if Tom Brady gets this guy in a room, he is going to fall in love with how much Fernando Mendoza loves the game of football. And I think that's the biggest thing, because when you watch him physically, you're not like slam dunk first overall pick. He has the size. He's a little skinny. He has a good arm, not a great arm. He's not a high-end athlete. He's not this creator outside of structure that we've seen in recent years. But the guy is efficient with the football. He rarely makes mistakes. He can handle pressure. We saw that from his time at Cal when he played behind one of the worst offensive lines in college football. And if you watch the Raiders, he's going to be playing behind one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL next year. But for all those reasons, I think this guy can start right away, and I think he has at least a high floor that Raiders fans, ever since they lost Derek Carr, have just been begging for.
If nothing else, he's going to bring you some positivity to the podium, and I feel like Las Vegas right now needs some positivity. Of course, the conversation with this year's quarterback class, guys, just kind of feels like it's okay, but one of the other names that we've been looking at in that top spot, potentially Dante Moore, waiting to hear if he's going to declare or not. So that takes us to the number 2 overall pick when it comes to the Jets. They've got a whole heck of a lot of first-round picks coming up over the next couple of years. We saw Justin Fields, that experience just did not work out the way they wanted to, Ryan. But if Dante Moore does declare, why is he a good fit for the Jets?
Hey, Haley. Hey, Mike. Good to see you guys. I didn't have Jamarcus versus Fernando on my 2026 mock draft bingo card, but here we are. By the way, where would the Raiders be had they drafted Brady Quinn, which would have been my choice back in 2007, but that's a conversation for another time. In terms of the Jets, you talked about it with Justin Fields. He's a rare example of someone who felt like regressed the more he played in the league. We saw flashes at Ohio State. It just never worked out in Chicago. Didn't really work out in Pittsburgh last year, and certainly didn't work out this year in New York. And for a team that had a fire sale of players at the trade deadline, mostly on defense, and failed to get an interception, you might argue they need some help on defense, but they have to start a quarterback. The free agent market is too volatile to rely on that to fix this franchise. And Dante Moore, although he's only started 1 year, is wise beyond his years. He's mature beyond his years. And we see it each and every week, his ability to do the subtle things that franchise quarterbacks have to do when plays break down, going back to the Penn State game in the fall, the way he played last weekend against Texas Tech. And I think that sort of experience translates to a team that's not going to be very good. I think he has the mental makeup to get it done. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's a bigger, stronger armed, more athletic version of Bryce Young, and everyone consensus had him as number 1 coming out a few years ago. So I think he's an upgrade there. Now, if you're AG and Darren Muji and our buddy Rick Spielman, you got to go to work in fixing literally everything else that's wrong with that organization on that roster.
Yeah, our buddy Rick Spielman's got his work cut out for him once again up there with the Jets. Let's move along to the Cardinals. We saw a coaching change this morning. Jonathan Gannon let go after this year. They racked up 14 losses. That's the most in Cardinals history. The problem with this, guys, is that they're handcuffed to a guy named Kyler Murray, who we saw the injuries this year just didn't work out for him. They still have to deal with his contract. But Renner, we're not even talking about the quarterback in this situation. You're looking at the defense here at number 3.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, this would be a class like 2024 where there's 3 slam dunk quarterbacks and you get Drake May at number 3 overall and he transforms your franchise. But that just ain't the case. Every year is a different draft. And this one specifically reminds me of like a 2022 or like a 2013 where someone's going to go top 5 who's just not a top 5 overall prospect. This does not have enough blue chip talent. The blue chip players play safety in Caleb Downs, play running back in Jeremiyah Love. They are not the guys that go top 5 in the NFL draft. That's why I think David Bailey makes a lot of sense for the Cardinals here. Ideally, you'd get an offensive tackle, but there is not an offensive tackle worthy of a top 5 pick in this year's draft class. So Bailey is a guy who has the best first step in this draft class. He's extremely explosive. I think because he's such a high-end athlete, he has such a high floor, and you've already seen such development from him from Stanford last year to Texas Tech this year, where Stanford literally didn't even have him as a full-time starter. He was a third down guy only because they were so worried about him against the run. And if you watch that game against Oregon, he was the best run defender on the football field that day. So his transformation over the course of the year, I'm buying into it. And maybe the Cardinals are here at number 3 overall as well.
I mean, the Cardinals were involved in so many like one-score tight games down the stretch. You'd like to think that some help on the defense there could maybe make those results go the opposite way. I want to move over to the Titans here because another year, Ryan, another time we're talking about this team picking high in the draft. They got their quarterback last year. Cam Ward did his big one. Some improvements definitely going forward, but he did not solve all of their problems, Ryan. So let's talk about maybe a linebacker that could be an impact player. What type of impact could Arvell Reese have in Tennessee?
Yeah, I love this pick that Mike has going to Tennessee. And we've had conversations in recent weeks when Tennessee had the first overall pick where Arvell, should they not trade down, would be the player they would take there. So they're now 3 spots further down, get a little better value there. Either way, Arvell Reese is one of the players that sort of came out of nowhere. We were talking a lot about his teammates Caleb Downs and Sonny Styles over the summer, and then Arvell decided to make the conversation about him. He can play off-ball linebacker. He can play 9 technique. He can play in the slot. He can line up anywhere you want him to line up. And he's going to draw comparisons to Micah Parsons in terms of the versatility. He's not built that way physically, and also Abdul Carter, not built that way physically as well, but he is just so incredibly explosive, and he can come at you from different angles, and I love the idea of giving them that chess piece on defense. Could they use a wide receiver and offensive lineman? Sure, but as Mike pointed out, that's not really where you want to go this high in the draft, and I think Arvell Reese, you're probably getting value here at 4 when he's probably a number 1 or number 2 overall pick outside of quarterback. So the Tennessee Titans make this pick easily, and they go on to move to their next picks to fix this franchise.
All right, so we've seen 2 quarterbacks, a handful of defensive players. Let's stay with the defensive side of the ball here and talk about the Giants, guys. Confusing game plan down the stretch here. The Giants lose like 9 in a row, and then they decide to go on a winning streak down at the end of the season there. They beat my Cowboys, first time in a really long time, so we will sit with that all offseason, and we'll talk about Dallas in a minute. However, let's talk about this defense here, Renner. How can they get better?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Cowboys are pretty happy about it. That's the reason they're not drafting number 1 overall here and trading it back for a haul of picks. So sitting at number 5, your options are far more limited. I have them going Kendric Faulk, the Auburn defensive lineman, because this was the worst run defense in the NFL this past fall. That has to change. You know, that is 1A, 1B, 1C if you're talking about what needs to change for this team to make the playoffs, especially in that division when you have so many great rushing offenses that you're going to have to face going forward. Kendric Faulk, to me, has all the traits to be an elite run defender, whether it's on the outside or I think with his frame at 6'6", 285, I think he could be a 3-tech, 4-tech, 5-tech at the NFL level, an interior sort of guy, and you put him next to Dexter Lawrence, and that's a guy who's going to upgrade you in the running game with some potential to be a pass rusher down the line. He's young, only a junior coming out here, but the physical tools are all there to develop to be something special, and you would have the makings of something special with all those first rounders now along that Giants defensive line.
All right, let's talk about the Browns, who we were all captivated by their draft process last year. It ended up with 2 quarterbacks and still needing a quarterback going forward. We also know here, Ryan, that Kevin Stefanski will no longer be the head coach in Cleveland there, so someone's going to get a really great head coach going forward. But in the meantime, Cleveland, they could use a lot of help. So walk me through this pick here at number 6. Renner has them taking an offensive tackle in Cleveland.
Yeah, out of Texas, Trevor Goosby. And you sort of touched on it, Haley. When you have two quarterbacks that are rookies that weren't first-round picks, you probably have none. Now it feels like they may roll forward with that. Sort of interesting. Mike didn't go with Ty Simpson here. Ty may still go back to school. There are also reports that Trevor might go back to school as well. Maybe he saw Mike's mock draft and decided he didn't want to go to Cleveland next year. But Mike really loves Trevor, and I thought he had a really good season and got better as the year went on. He's insanely athletic. He's enormous frame. He moves well, and he would make sense here as a top 10 pick, only because, as Mike alluded to earlier, there is not a lot of depth in this offensive line class, especially at tackle this high in the draft process. And the other thing is, and it feels like the Browns are sort of stuck with their quarterback situation, you have to fix this offensive line. And you have DeJuan Jones, who was banged up for much of the season. If he's healthy and controls his weight, can he play left or right tackle? Maybe, but that doesn't mean you can't help out, because they're going to have a ton of needs at right tackle and on the interior. So whoever the quarterback is, you have to get offensive line help, whether it's Trevor Goosby, should he come out, or whether it's in another direction, should Goosby decide to go back to Texas.
Lots of choices to be made there when it comes to quarterback. Of course, Shedeur Sanders, Dylan Gabriel. You also have Deshaun Watson. A lot of decisions to be made there. No question who the quarterback is in Washington. That, of course, is Jayden Daniels, although it was a very tough second year for him. He was just banged up, injury after injury. But even before the season started, fellas, he was already dealt a tough hand. That Terry McLaurin contract dispute that sort of drug out, and then that impacted Terry McLaurin this season. So how about we bring in a reliable pass catcher, Renner? What do you like about Carnell Tate in that room? How could he make a difference in Washington?
I like his ability to get vertical on the outside. I think that when Terry McLaurin was down this year was just completely absent in the offense. And it's sad because Jayden Daniels, in terms of go ball throwers, is arguably the best in the NFL. Between his rookie year, between his last year at LSU, that ability to just drop it in the bucket on the outside, he does it as well, if not better than anyone else in the NFL. They just didn't have a guy they trusted to actually go do that when Terry McLaurin was out. You have a bunch of underneath weapons there, so you can't have that happen. And especially with Terry McLaurin on the wrong side of 30, you don't know how long he's going to be that guy as well. You need to start thinking about year 3, year 4, year 5 of Jayden Daniels' rookie deal, which now looks like your window here to win a Super Bowl. Carnell Tate, getting him in the fold, is going to give you your best chance of winning those years. I know you need defense. Yes, that's a huge need. Hopefully you address that in free agency. You'll address that in day 2. But I don't think you pass on a guy like Carnell Tate with how well he pairs with Jayden Daniels.
Sometimes you got to take a best available, and he's in those conversations a lot of times for best available. Let's go to the backfield here and talk about the Saints. Tyler Shough, man, what a finish to the year that he had. The Saints were rolling until that final game against the Falcons, so it feels like the quarterback, they kind of have that box checked, at least for right now. But in this edition of this mock draft, Kellen Moore attacking the backfield a little bit. We know Alvin Kamara is on the final year of that 2-year extension, Ryan. So let's attack the running back room here with Jeremiyah Love at number 8.
Yeah, and you know what, Haley and Mike, I owe Tyler Shough an apology. I was not sold on him being the 40th overall pick as a 75-year-old AARP member, and all he did was go out there and absolutely ball. He balled to the point that my guy Spencer Rattler doesn't even have an argument. So I think you're right. I think Kellen Moore has his quarterback, which now makes life easier in this draft, and I love the idea of Mike putting Jeremiyah Love here, because you talk about Alvin Kamara. Taysom Hill's probably played his last game in New Orleans. They need help at wide receiver. Guess what Jeremiyah Love can do? All 3, and do it at a high level. I don't think he's as good as Jahmyr Gibbs or Bijan coming out a few years ago, but he ain't far behind. And I think in this offense with Kellen Moore and Tyler Shough going into year 2 together, this offense has a chance to continue to grow and saw what we saw in 2025.
I'm really proud of you for accepting that Tyler Shough is better than Spencer Rattler, Ryan. That is a really big admittment there from you. All right, so the first part of our mock draft here on this Monday is complete. Taking a look at Mike Renner's picks 1 through 8, broke them down for you. A handful of quarterbacks. Fernando Mendoza, congratulations. You are tasked with rebuilding the Raiders there. And you got the running back, Jeremiyah Love, with some big expectations down there in the Big Easy. Still plenty to discuss here on this mock draft Monday. When we come back, the Miami Hurricanes are making some noise in the college football playoff and boosting their draft stock along the way. How long will Rueben Bain have to wait to hear his name called? Ryan and Renner are back after this. Jumping right back into our Mock Draft Monday here on CBS Sports HQ Spotlight. We've got our draft analysts Mike Renner and Ryan Wilson joining us here as we go through Mike Renner's first mock draft of the new year here on Spotlight. So let's pick up the conversation with the number 9 pick. It belongs to the Chiefs. Just a terrible year for them out in Kansas City, tied for the most losses by a team in a single season after having 2 or less in the previous year. I want to avoid this becoming a trend in Kansas City here, guys. So Mike, it starts on the edge. Give us your play and why Rueben Bain maybe could make a big difference.
I love this fit for the Chiefs. To me, he's a Steve Spagnuolo sort of defensive end, a power end, dating back to his time as DC with the Giants when they won the Super Bowl. That's what he loved. He loved guys that can push the pocket. No one better in college football this year than Rueben Bain at doing just that. You've seen it all throughout the playoff. To me, his tweenerness, though, will cause him to drop in this draft. Short arms, built like a defensive tackle, but this guy's an edge through and through. It's not a lot of schemes, though, in the NFL want those 275-pound edges anymore. Kansas City is one of them. This would fix their pass rush woes that we saw so often when Chris Jones wasn't, at the peak of his game this past season. So for the Kansas City Chiefs, if he's there on the board, no brainer in my opinion.
Tweenerness, is that like an official draft word there? I like that.
It is. It's Rueben Bain's comp.
His tweenerness. All right, let's talk about the Bengals. We've got an entire research document sitting in our emails right now dedicated to Joe Burrow and what's going to happen with him. But really, this all boils down to the defense in Cincinnati's. Mike, you like the safety and Caleb Downs at 10. Ryan, why is that a good fit for the Bengals?
If I'm the Bengals, I'm not going to any pro days, the combine, any of the all-star games. All I'm going to do is wait to see whether Rueben Bain's there or if Caleb Downs is there. And whichever one's there, that's the one I'm taking because my defense is so absolutely atrocious. Both those guys are huge upgrades. The front office and the coaching staff are going absolutely nowhere because Mike Brown is not going to pay someone who is under contract. Caleb Downs is a layup. He comes in immediately and sets the tone on the back end of this defense. Would Rueben Bain Jr. be more disruptive earlier on? Perhaps, but I just love what Caleb Downs brings to every team he plays on and the ferocity with which he plays. This is a no-brainer pick. And again, you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to go anywhere. All you have to do is be able to write the name down and turn in the card.
All right, let's move over to the Dolphins. We've been talking defense, so we got to talk offense here. It sounds like Mike McDaniel's going to be sticking around in 2026. I don't know if either of you guys have seen the Dolphins' schedule for next year. It is brutal, and the fact that they don't know what their quarterback situation is going to look like makes it that much scary. But where do the Dolphins start here, Mike, with this pick that they have at number 11?
They're giving whoever does play quarterback a little bit of help. And to me, this is a scheme fit sort of pick in Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end out of Oregon, because he was built in a lab to play tight end for Mike McDaniel. He is incredible at blocking in space. And if you watch this Dolphins offense, they don't ask their tight ends to block in line. They are space blockers. They go find guys out on the edge. No one does it in this draft class better than Sadiq in that role. And also, he's the best yak tight end in this draft class. He's built like a jumbo running back. When he gets the ball in his hands, he breaks tackles. He can run away from guys. He has real deal speed. So for all those reasons, it's just such a perfect fit. And without Tyreek Hill this upcoming season, more likely than not, you got to have some weapons in this offense outside of Jalen Waddle. Kenyon Sadiq, he's that guy.
Great. Partner him with Devon Achane. Could be fun, but we'll have to wait and see. Let's talk about my Cowboys, guys. Just a failed season all across the board. You guys just listened to me complain about it before we came up here. It all points to that defense and what they lost with Micah Parsons. They did get better, Ryan, with Quinnen Williams, but the second he was unavailable, it went right back to allowing anyone and everyone to score points here. How do we fix that defense? For like the 10th year in a row, how do we fix the Cowboys defense?
You take these 2 first-round picks and you trade for Micah Parsons. Short of that, and Mike has him taking Sonny Styles here, which a pick I absolutely like. Some may say it's too high. I don't think it is. The other off-ball linebacker quotation mark at Ohio State. And you might say, well, his productivity on paper doesn't look like it's that great. Here's the thing. His pass rush win percentage was 17%. Arvell Reese, who went 4th overall, 18%. He can absolutely get after it. He improved by large amounts from 2024 tape to 2025. I love this pick because of his versatility, because DeMarvion Overshown struggles to stay healthy, and his ability to play sideline to sideline.
All right, let's hope DeMarvion can stay healthy, and then you get him some help, and then who knows, maybe we're in the postseason. Instead, we're going to talk about the Rams, who are picking at number 13. Remember, this is the pick they got from the Falcons after trading down last year. And Renner, my husband's going to like this one. He's a fellow Sun Devil. We got a Sun Devil going in the top 15. So what's the scouting report here on wide receiver Jordyn Tyson to the Rams?
He just gets open. That's a scouting report. Flip on his tape, doesn't matter what game. Chances are he's running away from quarterbacks. He is the best separator in this draft class. And you've seen that, without Davante Adams, when he's been gone this year, they kind of lack that guy who just has the gravity to get open at will. He's added such a dynamic element to this offense because you can't guard Davante Adams one-on-one that it's really taken the Rams passing game to another level this year. So keeping that going forward, even when Davante Adams does ultimately either, hang it up or play degrades, is going to be huge. Jordyn Tyson, he's that guy.
Yeah, he's a fun player to watch. Did have some injury issues this year as my husband forced me to watch Sun Devil football for like the third straight year. But I'm excited to see him in the NFL. Let's talk about the Ravens. I wonder if they're healed from the heartbreak last night. That Tyler Loop field goal sailing just wide was heartbreaking there. So no postseason in Baltimore, which means there's plenty of time to regroup here for John Harbaugh and the crew. Renner is targeting an offensive tackle here out of Miami.
Yeah, CC Mauigoa, and here's what he brings to the table as a right tackle. He's a grown man with grown man strength, and he has bad intentions. He may kick inside to guard, and I know some people feel that way. Renner may as well. I like him at tackle, but either way, they have Roger Rosengarten. But what did a lot of things, but what did the Ravens struggle with last night? Cam Hayward was playing like he was 25 years old and was on a mission to save his family with what he did to that interior offensive line. And I think someone like Mauigoa comes in right away and solidifies the middle of that offensive line, which is going to be a huge priority over the offseason. So I think this pick makes a ton of sense. And if you told me that Mauigoa goes 5 or 6 picks higher than this, I could understand that as well, given how well he played for the U this year.
Always can get good offensive line help in that opening round, and that's exactly what the guys are looking at. So we have made it officially halfway through, a little over halfway through, I should say, of Mike Renner's first mock draft of 2026. We've had an edge rusher go and Rueben Bain, a lot of high praise for him. Hopefully he can help things out up in Kansas City. Ryan Wilson tells me that Sonny Styles is a great pick for my Cowboys. We will have to wait and see. All right, so the back half of the upcoming draft coming up next. How a pair of Clemson players can make some noise in Pittsburgh as we continue through our Mock Draft Monday here on Spotlight. Mock Draft Monday continues here on HQ Spotlight with our NFL draft analysts Ryan Wilson and Mike Renner. We're picking up our draft with the number 15 spot. That belongs to the Buccaneers. Shout out to producer James. He also was enjoying the pictures of Baker Mayfield sweating between that Saints-Falcons game yesterday. But really, guys, it kind of just contextualized the season in Tampa. Those high expectations derailed by injuries down the stretch. Some of which were on the offensive line. So, Renner, we're starting off this round with an offensive lineman out of Utah to Tampa at 15.
Yeah, to me, Spencer Fano is the best guard prospect in this draft class. I know he played tackle at Utah, but I think he kicks inside in the NFL. And there were issues at guard this past year for the Tampa Bay Bucs. They were big, and I think Fano, being the best guard prospect, is just going to pair with Tristan Wirfs on that left side to give you a left side that you don't have to worry about for like the next decade. That to me, if I'm Jason White, is very appealing, especially when you have a roster that there's not a lot of needs. There's not a lot of pain points. They just need some of the guys they drafted highly to play better. So I think this is an eat your vegetables pick and probably best for the long term for the Bucs.
Eat your vegetables, another great term. I like your draft lingo over here, Mike Renner. This is fun. Let's go to the Jets. I mentioned it earlier. They have so many first-round picks between 26 and 27. This one at 16 came via the Sauce Gardner trade midway through the season. They need a lot of help everywhere. We talked about them addressing that quarterback spot earlier in the draft. But if we continue the pass game conversation here, I thought this was interesting, Ryan. Garrett Wilson led the team with 395 total yards despite not catching a pass since week 6. So obviously wide receiver is high on the list. They did get Adonai Mitchell in that trade, but not super exciting. So who else could be exciting in that spot?
A.D. Mitchell just watching the show, catching strays from Haley, trying to do his job here. By the way, Garrett Wilson also tied for the team leading interceptions with 0 because that team is so bad defensively. But I love what Mike's done here with Makai Lemon because you mentioned A.D. Mitchell. He does have an opportunity to continue to grow. He finally scored a touchdown earlier this fall, but they have as well Garrett Wilson coming back. And then you have Dante Moore, who is incredibly accurate at all 3 levels we've seen at Oregon. And the one thing that Makai Lemon does is get open in the middle of the field and make life easy for his quarterback. So I love this pick here. Now they have to focus on the defense with every other pick subsequent to this one. Yeah,
they've got a couple more coming up in 2027, but we'll focus on the 2026 version of those Jets right now. Sorry to A.D. Mitchell. The facts to the facts. Let's talk about the Lions, fellas. No surprise here. We're tackling the secondary in Detroit. I mean, like, they were set back before they could even begin there with all of the injuries that stacked up to that unit. So looking for some help from a different big cat. We're going former LSU Tiger Mansoor Delane here, Mike.
Yeah, to me, he was the best man cover corner in all college football this past season. If you watch the Lions, you know man coverage is their bread and butter. And you just have to kind of 2 years in with that 2024 draft class where they went corner back-to-back and Terran Arnold, Anis Rakesstraw. You have to admit that it hasn't worked out with those guys through 2 seasons. Arnold's shown some flashes, but I'm not sure you can say 100% those are our guys going forward. And when that's the case, and that's still probably the biggest thing holding you back outside of maybe some pass rush, when there's not really a great pass rushing options here, you still got to address it. Delane would just be a perfect fit in this spot.
Let's talk about the last team that was eliminated from postseason play. That, of course, is the Vikings. So we're going to stay in the division here. We're also going to stay kind of with the position here, Renner. You like Jermod McCoy at 18. Ryan, what do you like about that?
Big, strong, physical, can play vertically in terms of staying in phase. The issue is he didn't play last season because of an ACL injury he suffered 12 months ago now. So we're going to have to sort of kick the tires on him through the pre-draft process. We had the same conversation with Sugo and Revel. Ended up being a second-round pick of your Dallas Cowboys, Haley. But he fits exactly what Brian Flores looks for in a defensive back. They have a ton of needs in the secondary, including Harrison Smith, who's probably going to retire. So I love this pick. It makes sense, especially if you're of the opinion that KOC is going to roll with J.J. McCarthy for another year, and it certainly feels like they're headed in that direction.
A lot of questions there with J.J. McCarthy and those injuries, but you mentioned it. We'll have to wait and see what they do. Let's talk about the Panthers. I know producer James is excited about this one. His team is in the postseason, getting past those Bucs there. It was a nail-biter down the stretch. So while they celebrate, you got to still think about what's to come here, and they've got this pick at number 19. Could go a lot of different directions here, Mike, but you like the defensive line, a spot where they already kind of have some money tied to it, but you can never get too good on the defensive line.
Yeah, they do. You know, they have 2 of the higher paid defensive tackles in football in Turk Wharton and Derek Brown. But to me, Peter Woods is complementary to those guys, the Clemson defensive tackle. And this is reminiscent of, I think producer James should be pretty happy about it, because a certain other Clemson defensive tackle was a 5-star recruit, came in, was an awesome true freshman, fell to 19 after a disappointing junior year. And his name is Dexter Lawrence. And he's one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. That's how I see Peter Woods' career going, because the talent he showed early on was exceptional. He just didn't put his best foot forward this past fall.
Let's stay on the defensive side of the ball here. We're going back to my Cowboys, of course. When I looked at the rundown, I was like, why do we have 2 first-round picks? And then I was like, oh, yeah, we traded Micah Parsons. So this is the the pick that we get from Micah Parsons here. One thing I will say, Ryan, and you and I have talked about this ad nauseum, they are pretty good, the Joneses, when it comes to handling the draft. They've got Will McClay as well, who really finds some sneaky good players here. So we're staying on the defensive side of the ball, but give me another player that's going to help that unit next year.
Yeah, shout out Will McClay, because who knows where this team would be without him. So back-to-back Clemson guys go here. TJ Parker, edge rusher, who was my favorite player over the summer, never lived up to the expectations this fall. But so does TJ Parker plus Sonny Styles, who they drafted earlier, equal Micah Parsons? No. But if you throw in Quentin Williams, we're getting close. And I think if he can get back to his 2024 form, you're getting some real juice off the edge to pair opposite Donovan Ezaraku, their second-round pick this year, who flashed at times, just needs to play a little bit more consistently. So I get the pick here. I think it makes sense, and this defense is definitely better after these 2 first-rounders.
All right, he's no Micah Parsons, but I will allow him to build a legend for himself before I judge him there. We need some help, though, for sure, on the defensive side of the ball. And we like TJ Parker, apparently. A couple of Clemson guys going off the board there between picks 15 and 20, tackling a lot of the defense in this portion of the draft as well. Coming up, we still have plenty more to talk about. A flurry of wide receivers poised to make some noise at the next level. That's where Mock Draft Monday takes us next. How teams can take advantage of sneaky good pass catchers next. Welcome back to HQ Spotlight. We are working our way through Mike Renner's mock draft. On this Monday, we pick it up with the 21st pick in the 2026 draft. That belongs to the Steelers. I don't know if you guys knew this. Aaron Rodgers historically is the most sacked quarterback in all of NFL history. He added 29 more sacks this year to his tally in 2025. Obviously, we don't know which direction he's going in terms of whether or not he's going to return to football, but we do know that whoever's behind center could certainly benefit from some better protection here, Mike Renner. So talk to me about the Steelers picking at number 21.
Yeah, I mean, they drafted offensive tackle a few years ago in the first round, Broderick Jones, and 3 years in, it's time to admit, it just hasn't worked out. He has not been the answer there, and so you got to find one. And to me, Caleb Lomu, the Utah offensive tackle, could easily be that guy. I think you watch his tape, and you see a guy who has the hands, the feet, the coordination to be a high-end pass protector. He just needs to get a lot stronger, and we've seen that happen with a lot of offensive tackles over the years. It's something that guys can improve, so maybe it's not the year one massive improvement, but I would bet money on Caleb Lomu being a much better pass protector than at least Broderick Jones.
All right, draft and develop maybe when it comes to the Steelers there. At number 22, we have the Chargers picking another team. And I know we talk about injuries being impactful to all of these teams, but really the Chargers had a hard time with injuries, And so, Ryan, when we look at Renner's mock, he likes Caleb Banks out of Florida in this spot. However, there is a caveat. You can read about it on CBSSports.com. The fifth-year senior has dealt with injuries of his own here, Ryan, a foot injury kind of on and off. How big of a gamble is this, and why do you think this is a good fit?
Yeah, and that'll be the conversation we have over the next 100 or so days, because Johnny Newton a few years ago coming to Illinois, first-round talent, went in the second round because of a foot injury to Washington. But I think Caleb Banks fits exactly what Jim Harbaugh likes when he builds through the middle. This defensive line class is pretty thin, and he's incredibly active and disruptive for his size, 6'5", 330 and change. So this pick makes all the sense in the world. If he's cleared medically, he almost certainly will be a first-round pick. And again, he makes a ton of sense for what the Chargers like to do, especially as they build middle out. So Caleb Banks healthy, top 32 pick in my mind for sure.
Healthy is the asterisk there, though. We go to number 23, where the Philadelphia Eagles will be picking. This is the same story, different book when it comes to Philly, right? All the drama with their pass catchers and their offense, and no one's happy and no one's making any money. So Renner, this next pick is kind of contingent upon whether or not A.J. Brown does end up being happy. He's kind of at the center of this all. Walk us through what you think Philly's game plan is here at number 23.
Yeah, I am going Washington wide receiver Denzel Boston. And again, this only makes sense if A.J. Brown is traded. You can't cut him with his contract, but you can trade him easily and get some cap relief. And given just how much of a distraction that's been, given he's kind of trailing off in his career, I think it would make a lot of sense for the Eagles to do just that, recoup the value that you can get, and replace him with a guy who has a similar skill set. Denzel Boston is that outside contested catch route winner there on the vertical tree that can just run the same stuff that A.J. Brown does. Obviously, he's not going to be as good as A.J. Brown, but it can be a seamless replacement when the passing offense hasn't been that great this year anyways.
You mentioned a trade with A.J. Brown, and then my antennas kind of went up. I wonder if Brandon Beane is listening, because all we've talked about when it comes to Buffalo is the fact that we need to get Josh Allen some help. And so at number 24, you're telling me potentially A.J. Brown trade could be on the table? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the pick here, though, Ryan, when it comes to number 24. However, we know that wide receiver is really where they need to build.
Yeah, KC Concepcion at Texas A&M by way of NC State had a fantastic season. Also an incredible return threat. And again, you might say, well, they have Khalil Shakir. How many slot guys do they need? KC Concepcion can line up in the slot or outside. And I will take 10 Khalil Shakirs versus what they currently have, which involves a lot of Keon Coleman being inactive. I think all you need are guys to get open. They don't all need to be 6'3". We've seen Tom Brady win with guys under 5'11" throughout his career. KC Concepcion had a fantastic season for Texas A&M. He's going to hit the ground running, both playing out of the slot primarily and also as a returner for the Buffalo Bills.
Also one of the best names in this upcoming draft, too, Concepcion. That is a lot of fun to say. Let's go to Chicago at number 25. The Bears looking at Kadyn Proctor. I remember Kadyn Proctor when he was an Iowa Hawkeye, and then he went back to Alabama, so kind of flip-flopping around a little bit when it comes to college, Renner. So why should the Bears be excited about this pick?
He's such a physical monster at left tackle. This guy moving people in the running game is as good as it gets in this draft class. And that's really what the Bears care about. Ben Johnson is trying to build the best run blocking unit, similar to what he had in Detroit, where they can just go into every game and just roll it on the ground. Proctor gives you that ability. Left tackle, obviously, they were rolling in guys left and right at that position all year long. This gives you stability there, and it's one of the few schemes where he wouldn't get exposed in pass protection because they're not really drop back passing that often.
Let's stay on the offensive line, but go to San Francisco, who hold the number 26 pick. I love this pick. I wish I could pronounce his name, so thankfully I've got great analysts like Ryan Wilson. Talk to me about the Penn State offensive lineman here that Mike Renner likes.
He goes by Vega Ione, so there you go. That should be pretty straightforward. He can play left or right guard, and Mike wrote about this. I think it's exactly right. They got Dominic Pooney a couple years ago, who's been pretty good. Spencer Burford, not so much. And I think if you're going to solidify that interior line and play against the likes of the Seattle Seahawks, which we saw them really struggle with the other night, someone like Vega Ione, makes a ton of sense here. Start in the middle, work your way out, and let Brock Purdy continue to cook and allow Christian McCaffrey a little more room to run.
This is why you need to listen to our experts on their podcast. You get those pronunciations out of the way, too. Let's go to number 27 with the Texans. They have become one of the best defensive units in all of football between Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. So why not add to it here, Ray? You can never have too much depth here, Mike Renner.
Yeah, obviously you'd love an offensive lineman who's a day one starter that's going to fix it. But after Ione went the pick before, I don't think there really is one sitting here. So I'm going Amari Washington, defensive tackle, who is the most explosive DT in this draft class. And if you watch this Texans defensive line, you know they don't really need more explosiveness, but that it had more, it would be absolutely terrifying. We're talking about what could be an all-time defense if you add a guy like that that can just be a disruptor in the middle of it. Already the best defense in the NFL, but there are levels to this. They can get even better, and that's a scary thought.
Yeah, that unit getting better. Definitely scary. You said it best, Mike. All right, here is our next round of picks, 21 through 27. A good mix, but we do see the wide receiver duo maybe helping out Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts going forward. Final push here on Mock Draft Monday, tackling the rest of the team's postseason bound. Who's going to win the C.J. Allen sweepstakes? Ryan and Renner will let you know. A little bit here of our Mock Draft Monday with Mike Renner and Ryan Wilson. Guys, let's go back to the draft board where we find the Browns picking again at number 28. This is the pick that, of course, they received from Jacksonville when they did that trade to get Travis Hunter. Maybe expected that pick to be a little bit earlier in this draft, though. That is for Cleveland. So let's pick it up with that conversation. We've talked about them picking already once here. But Ryan, this is an even number, so you get to go first here. What do you think about Renner's pick?
I like it a lot. Max Iheanachor, the right tackle at Arizona State, played as much football in high school as you or me, Haley. Didn't start playing until junior college, and all he has done is gotten meteorically better. And look, maybe the Browns sort of are okay with this pick at 28 because they wouldn't have taken him top 10 had the pick been there for Travis Hunter. So they get him at the bottom of the first round. Developmental, but a huge athlete and upside there. So I think this pick makes a ton of sense. And you might say they already drafted a tackle. Don't care. Keep drafting them until you get it right.
We've talked about it all day. You can never have too much help, whether it's the offensive or the defensive line here. Let's go back to the Rams at number 29. One of the biggest points of contention in LA has been that cornerback spot. So how does a guy like Avieon Terrell solve that problem here, Renner?
To me, he's perfect for what the Rams need. He is a great tackler. He's a great zone corner. He's physical. Gonna fall to this point though because he's not the biggest, but the Rams historically they haven't really cared about not having the biggest cornerbacks. That's not in their scouting methodology. So he's a guy that they would love, and he's got the bloodlines too, brother of AJ Terrell, who's not a bad corner himself for the Atlanta Falcons. So for all those reasons, I think this is a very easy pick for the Rams at this point in time.
Helps when you've got that bloodline, like you mentioned, in the NFL. Let's go to the Patriots at number 30, one of the biggest turnarounds we've seen in this league. A lot has been made about the quarterback, but how about that defensive unit, Ryan? How can a guy like Lee Hunter help that side of the ball?
Yeah, so we're at the point in the process now where teams will maybe calling to move up, and then when every draft board is going to be different by this point, 27 or 28 picks in. This feels like a Patriot pick. I like Lee Hunter a lot. I think he's a much better run defender than he is in terms of getting after the passer, but maybe that's what Mike Vrabel is looking for in the middle of that defense because you talk about that group playing at a pretty high level at all three levels. I don't know if he's quite in the first round conversation for me, but we've seen the Patriots historically take guys in the first round that perhaps other teams have lower grades on. So if they like Lee Hunter and they make sense, it makes sense Lee does for what they want to do, I completely and wholly understand what they're doing here because after they crushed the Mike Vrabel hire and the year before that got the Drake May pick right, they can do very little wrong. So I will trust them on this too.
We talked a lot about that Texans defense, how they're the best unit that the NFL has this year, but maybe the Broncos would have something to say about that. They kind of started the year with that title and then fell off a little bit down the stretch, had some injuries that impacted them and that unit. But as we always say in this game, defense wins championships. And Mike, right now you foresee this one getting a little bit better thanks to a Georgia Bulldog.
Yeah, I've been going C.J. Allen, the linebacker there. To me, he's a lot like Jalen Walker from last year, but as an off-ball linebacker, same sort of hard-nosed, physical play style, just the way he attacks offensive linemen. He never backs down. And for a front seven there, that's, like you said, already one of the best in the NFL. This is just another piece to keep it dominant, to keep it at that level where you're going to be a handful week in and week out. He's an awesome blitzer. He's great in the running game. He is a guy that would fit in perfectly in that front seven.
All right, we wrap up the conversation with the Seattle Seahawks picking at number 32. Mike McDonald does not get enough credit for what he's been able to do in Seattle over these first 2 years, I will say. But leaning into that defensive mantra, defense wins championships. It's not quite the Legion of Boom yet, Ryan, but maybe could get there with the help of another McDonald, maybe a Kayden McDonald. What do you think about the pick?
Yeah, that group is getting after it pretty good. Maybe no Richard Sherman, but they got a lot of other dudes making names for themselves. You talk about Kayden McDonald, who plays the defensive line for Ohio State. And again, like Lee Hunter, really good against the run. I think he has some work to do as a pass rusher. But again, when you go into a Mike McDonald defense that's already stacked, you have Byron Murphy, the former first-round pick. You signed Tank Lawrence, who you know from Dallas. You have Leonard Williams playing out of his mind. You drafted Nicky Manwari in the second round, who's playing really well at the second and third levels. There is a place for someone like Kayden McDonald in this defense to do his job and do it well. So again, he may not be everyone's flavor of the month in terms of defensive line at the bottom of the first round, but there's a very good chance he goes in round one, because what he does it at such a high level. And when you have someone like Mike McDonald, who's been so good at getting the most out of this group in year two, this would make a ton of sense for me and for Kayden McDonald's progress as he makes his way into the NFL.
Kayden McDonald, the final pick in our first mock draft Monday of 2026. There's the final few picks we just broke down with Mike Renner and Ryan Wilson. As you see the names on your screen, we're going to tie a bow on the first mock draft of the year after the break. Mike and Ryan going to give their final thoughts ahead of the 2026 draft coming up.